The wind howled through the Rocky Mountains with a fury that could strip the flesh from a man's bones. And Marcus Zane knew he had maybe an hour before full darkness turned the snowy trail into a death trap. He had been riding since dawn, pushing his horse harder than he should have, trying to make it back to Monticello before the worst of the January storm hit. But nature had other plans. The year was 1882, and even seasoned cowboys like himself knew better than to challenge a winter blizzard in southeastern Utah. Yet here he was, snow already accumulating on his shoulders and his horse's mane turning white with ice. That was when he saw her, a dark shape huddled against a boulder beside the trail, and his heart lurched in his chest because no living thing should be out here in this weather without proper protection. Marcus pulled his horse to a stop, the animal snorting protest at the pause in movement when all it wanted was shelter. He swung down from the saddle, his boots crunching in the fresh powder, and approached the figure carefully. As he drew closer, he could see it was a woman, her thin dress soaked through and her lips tinged blue with cold. She was shivering so violently that her teeth chattered audibly even over the wind, her arms wrapped around herself in a futile attempt at warmth. Her dark hair hung in wet tangles around her face, and when she looked up at him, her eyes held a combination of fear and desperate hope that struck him like a physical blow. "Please," she managed to whisper through chattering teeth, "please help me." Marcus did not hesitate. He shrugged out of his heavy sheepskin coat, the one that had kept him alive through countless winters on the range, and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. The cold hit him immediately, seeping through his wool shirt and making him gasp, but he ignored it. This woman would die if he did not get her warm and dry and fast. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, pulling the coat tighter around her and helping her to her feet. She could barely stand, her legs weak from cold and exhaustion. "Stage," she stammered. "Attacked. Everyone ran. Got separated. Been walking since yesterday." Yesterday. She had been out in this weather since yesterday. Marcus felt a surge of anger at whoever had left her behind, but there was no time for that now. He looked at his horse, calculating distances and odds. Monticello was still a good 5 miles away, but there was an old line shack about 2 miles back the way he had come. It was not much, just 4 walls and a roof that the ranch hands used during summer roundups, but it would have to do. "Can you ride?" he asked, already knowing the answer but hoping anyway. She shook her head, her whole body swaying with the movement. Marcus made a decision. He lifted her into the saddle, her weight almost nothing in his arms, and climbed up behind her. He wrapped one arm around her waist to hold her steady and took the reins with the other hand, then turned his horse back down the trail. The animal balked at first, not wanting to head away from home and shelter, but Marcus urged him on with firm pressure from his knees. The ride to the line shack felt like it took hours, though it could not have been more than 40 minutes. Marcus kept the woman pulled tight against his chest, trying to share what body heat he could through his shirt, feeling her shiver against him. She did not speak, and he worried she might be slipping into the dangerous sleep that came before freezing to death. He talked to her, keeping his voice steady and calm, telling her about the shack and the fire he would build and the hot coffee he would make, anything to keep her conscious and fighting. When the dark shape of the line shack finally appeared through the swirling snow, Marcus nearly wept with relief. He pulled the horse right up to the door, dismounted, and lifted the woman down. She could not walk on her own anymore, so he carried her inside, kicking the door open with his boot. The interior was pitch black and smelled of old wood and mouse droppings, but it was out of the wind, and that was all that mattered. Marcus laid the woman on the floor as gently as he could, then went back outside to tend to his horse. He led the animal around to the lean-to on the side of the shack, unsaddled him quickly, and rubbed him down with handfuls of old straw he found in the corner. It was not enough, but it would have to do. He grabbed his saddlebags and the bedroll tied behind the saddle, then hurried back inside. The shack was a single room with a potbelly stove in one corner, a rough wooden table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bunk built against one wall. There was a small supply of firewood stacked beside the stove, left over from last season, and Marcus sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever Cowboy had restocked it before leaving. He worked quickly, his fingers clumsy with cold, getting kindling arranged in the stove and striking a match. The tiny flame caught, grew, and soon he had a proper fire going. He added larger pieces of wood and adjusted the damper, then turned his attention back to the woman. She lay where he had left her, still wrapped in his coat, her eyes closed. For one terrible moment, Marcus thought he was too late, but then he saw the shallow rise and fall of her chest and knew she was still breathing. He knelt beside her and touched her face with the back of his hand. Her skin was like ice. "Miss," he said firmly, "I need you to wake up now. Can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered and opened slowly. Her eyes were a deep brown, he noticed, like rich earth after rain. She looked at him without recognition or understanding, and Marcus knew she was in bad shape. "We need to get you out of these wet clothes," he said, trying to keep his voice professional and matter-of-fact. "You will freeze if we do not. Do you understand?" She nodded faintly but made no move to help herself. Marcus swallowed hard, fighting down his discomfort at the situation. He was a gentleman, raised by a good mother who had taught him to respect women, but propriety meant nothing when survival was at stake. He helped her sit up and began working the buttons of her dress with fingers that felt like sausages. The fabric was soaked through and half frozen, stiff and unyielding. It took him long minutes to get the dress off her, revealing a thin cotton chemise underneath that was equally wet. He averted his eyes as much as possible while helping her out of that as well, then wrapped her quickly in both wool blankets from his bedroll. Her undergarments were still damp, but he could not bring himself to remove those. Instead, he rubbed her arms and legs through the blankets, trying to restore circulation. The heat from the stove was beginning to fill the small space, taking the deadly edge off the cold. Marcus hung her wet clothes on the backs of the chairs and positioned them near the stove to dry, then turned back to check on his patient. She was watching him now, more awareness in her eyes, and he saw her cheeks flush with embarrassment even through the pallor of cold. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You saved my life." "Not yet," Marcus said gruffly, uncomfortable with her gratitude, "but we are working on it. What is your name?" "Lily," she said after a moment. "Lily Patterson." "Marcus Zane," he replied, touching the brim of his hat instinctively before remembering he had lost it somewhere on the ride. "I work for the Circle T Ranch about 8 miles from here." "What happened to your stage?" Lily's face crumpled, and tears began to roll down her cheeks. "Bandits," she said. 4 of them with masks over their faces. They stopped us on the road and demanded all our valuables. The driver tried to argue and they shot him. Just shot him dead right there in front of everyone. Then they made us all get out and line up. I was so scared I could not think straight. When one of them grabbed my bag, I screamed and ran. I just ran into the trees without thinking, and I heard others running too, but I do not know what happened to them. I kept running until I could not hear the gunshots anymore, and then I realized I was lost. Marcus felt his jaw tighten with anger. Bandits had been plaguing the stage route between Monticello and Blanding for months now, growing bolder with each robbery. The territorial marshal had been trying to track them down, but they seemed to know the country too well, disappearing into the maze of canyons and mesas that characterized this part of Utah. "When did this happen?" he asked. "Yesterday morning," Lily said. "I walked all day, trying to find the road again, but everything looked the same. When night came, I tried to keep moving to stay warm, but I was so tired. I finally stopped to rest by that rock, just for a minute, but I could not get up again. I thought I was going to die there." "You would have," Marcus said bluntly. "Another hour and you would have frozen solid." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was shivering less now, the warmth from the stove and blankets doing their work. Marcus stood and went to his saddlebags, pulling out a tin of coffee and a small pot. There was a bucket in the corner of the shack, and he filled it with clean snow from just outside the door, then set it on the stove to melt. While he waited for the water to heat, he found some jerky and hardtack in his bags and brought them over to Lily. "Eat this," he said. "Slow and small bites. Your stomach will not thank you if you rush it." She took the food with trembling hands and nibbled at the jerky. Marcus watched her for a moment, taking in details he had missed in his rush to get her warm. She was young, probably not more than 22 or 23, with delicate features and long, dark hair that was beginning to dry in waves around her face. Even exhausted and frightened, she was beautiful, and Marcus felt something stir in his chest that he had not felt in a long time. He turned away, busying himself with making coffee. He was 31 years old and had been working ranches since he was 15, moving from place to place, never staying long in one spot. He had learned early that attachments were liabilities, that caring too much about anything or anyone just gave the world leverage to hurt you. His father had taught him that lesson through frequent beatings, and his mother had reinforced it by dying when he needed her most, leaving him alone with a man who saw him as nothing but free labor. Marcus had left home at 14 and never looked back, making his own way in the world through hard work and keeping his distance from emotional entanglements. But something about this woman pulled at him in a way he could not explain. Maybe it was just the circumstances, the primal satisfaction of having saved a life. Or maybe it was the way she had looked at him with those deep brown eyes, trusting him completely in her moment of greatest need. Whatever it was, Marcus recognized it as dangerous and tried to wall it off inside himself. The snow water melted and began to bubble. Marcus added coffee grounds and let it boil for a few minutes, then poured 2 cups. He brought one to Lily and kept one for himself, wrapping his cold fingers around the hot tin and savoring the warmth. The first sip burned his tongue, but he welcomed it. Lily drank her coffee slowly, both hands wrapped around the cup, the blankets pulled tight around her shoulders. Color was returning to her face, the dangerous blue tinge fading from her lips. She looked around the small shack, taking in their surroundings, and Marcus saw the moment when the reality of their situation hit her. "How long will we be stuck here?" she asked quietly. Marcus moved to the small window and looked out. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Snow was falling so thick he could barely see his horse in the lean-to just a few feet away. "At least until morning," he said. "Maybe longer if this keeps up. But we have shelter and heat and enough food for a few days if we need it. We will be fine." Lily nodded, but he could see the worry in her eyes. She was a young, unmarried woman, alone in a cabin with a strange man. Her reputation would be in tatters if anyone found out, regardless of the innocent circumstances. Marcus understood her concern, but there was nothing to be done about it. Survival trumped propriety every time. "I will sleep on the floor," he said, anticipating her unspoken worry. "You take the bunk. And Miss Patterson, I want you to know that you are safe with me. I will not do anything to dishonor you or take advantage of this situation. You have my word on that." She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to read his character in his features. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded and some of the tension went out of her shoulders. "Thank you, Mr. Zane," she said softly. "I believe you." They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee and listening to the wind howl outside. The temperature in the shack continued to rise as the stove did its work, the small space actually becoming comfortable. Marcus fed another piece of wood into the fire and checked on Lily's clothes. The dress was beginning to dry, though it would take hours before it was truly ready to wear. "Where were you headed?" Marcus asked, more to break the silence than because he needed to know. "Monticello," Lily replied. "I was coming from Durango to take a position as a school teacher. The town council hired me by mail after their previous teacher left to get married. I have all my papers and credentials in my bag, which is probably stolen by now along with everything else I owned." Marcus heard the despair in her voice and felt a pang of sympathy. "I am sorry," he said. "That is a hard way to start a new life in a new place." "It is all I had," Lily said, her voice breaking. "All my savings went into the coach fare and new clothes for teaching. I was going to start fresh, make something of myself. Now I have nothing. No money, no belongings, not even proper shoes." She looked down at her bare feet peeking out from under the blankets, and a tear rolled down her cheek. Marcus made a decision then, one that surprised him even as he spoke the words. "When we get to Monticello, I will help you," he said. "I know people in town. We will get you sorted out with the school board and find you a place to stay until you get on your feet. You did not come all this way just to give up now." Lily looked up at him, hope and uncertainty warring in her expression. "Why would you do that for me? You do not even know me." "Maybe not," Marcus said. "But I know what it is like to be alone in the world with nothing but your own determination to keep you going. And I know that good people deserve a helping hand when they need it. You are a teacher, which means you are trying to do something worthwhile with your life. That is worth supporting." "You are a good man, Marcus Zane," Lily said quietly, and the way she said his name made something warm bloom in his chest. The afternoon wore on into evening, the gray light outside the window fading to black. Marcus rationed out more jerky and hardtack for their supper, wishing he had something more substantial to offer. Lily ate without complaint, though he could tell she was still exhausted. Her eyelids kept drooping and she would catch herself starting to nod off. "You should sleep," Marcus said. "The bunk is not much, but it is better than the floor. I will keep the fire going and wake you if anything happens." Lily nodded, too tired to argue. She stood on shaky legs, the blankets wrapped around her like a cocoon, and made her way to the narrow bunk. Marcus turned his back to give her privacy as she arranged herself, and when he heard the rustle of movement stop, he looked over to see her curled on her side, already fast asleep. He settled himself on the floor near the stove, using his saddle as a pillow and his coat as a blanket. It was not comfortable, but he had slept in worse places. The important thing was that Lily was safe and warm. Tomorrow they would wait out the storm, and the day after they would make their way to Monticello. He would keep his word and help her get established, and then he would go back to his life on the ranch. Simple. Except as he lay there in the darkness, listening to her soft breathing and the crackle of the fire, Marcus knew it would not be that simple. Something had changed when he wrapped his coat around her shivering shoulders, something fundamental and irreversible. He had spent so many years keeping his heart locked away, refusing to let anyone in, but this woman had slipped past his defenses without even trying. He barely knew her, yet he felt connected to her in a way that defied logic. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but his mind kept returning to those deep brown eyes and the trust he had seen in them. He was in trouble, and he knew it. Morning came gray and cold, with snow still falling but not as heavily as the night before. Marcus woke to find the fire burned down to coals and the temperature in the shack noticeably cooler. He stood stiffly, his back protesting the night on the hard floor, and added wood to the stove until flames licked up again. Lily still slept, her face peaceful in repose, and Marcus let her rest while he went outside to check on his horse. The animal was cold but alive, stamping his feet and blowing clouds of steam from his nostrils. Marcus gave him the last of the grain from his saddlebags and rubbed him down with his hands, trying to generate some warmth. The lean-to provided minimal shelter, but it was better than nothing. Marcus knew the horse could not take another night of this weather without suffering permanent damage, which meant they needed to get moving today if the storm broke. When he came back inside, Lily was awake and sitting up on the bunk, the blankets still wrapped around her. She gave him a shy smile that made his heart skip. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," Marcus replied, stomping snow off his boots. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Lily said. "Sore and hungry, but alive thanks to you. I was just thinking that yesterday morning, I was on a stagecoach believing my biggest challenge would be managing a classroom of frontier children. And now here I am, sitting in a lined shack in my undergarments with a strange cowboy. Life is unpredictable." Marcus appreciated her attempt at humor despite their circumstances. "Your dress is mostly dry," he said, retrieving it from the chair near the stove. "Not perfect, but good enough to wear. I will step outside while you get dressed." He gave her privacy, standing just outside the door in the falling snow and giving her time. When she called that she was ready, he came back in to find her dressed and attempting to finger-comb her tangled hair. The dress was wrinkled and worse for wear, but it was decent enough. Her feet were still bare, and Marcus knew that would be a problem. "My boots are probably too big, but they are better than nothing," he said, pulling off his spare pair from his saddlebag. He had learned long ago to carry extras of anything important, and right now he was grateful for his paranoia. Lily tried them on, and they were indeed too large, flopping loosely around her feet, but she stuffed the toes with rags Marcus tore from an old burlap sack he found in the corner, and that helped. It was not ideal, but it would get her to town. Marcus made more coffee and divided the last of his jerky between them. It was not much of a breakfast, but it was all they had. Lily ate without complaint, and Marcus found himself admiring her resilience. Many women of his acquaintance would have been hysterical or demanding after an ordeal like hers, but Lily faced their situation with calm practicality. "The snow is letting up," Marcus said, peering out the window. "I think we can try for town in a few hours if it keeps improving. It will be slow going, but my horse can carry us both if we take it easy." "I hate to impose on you any further," Lily said. "You have already done so much." "It is no imposition," Marcus said firmly. "Besides, what else would you do? Walk to town in boots 3 sizes too big? You would not make it half a mile." Lily smiled at that, and Marcus felt that warm flutter in his chest again. He busied himself with preparing for their journey, trying to ignore the feeling. This was just a rescue, nothing more. Once he got her to town and helped her get settled, they would go their separate ways. She would be a schoolteacher and he would be a cowboy, and their paths would probably never cross again. The thought made him unexpectedly sad. They waited until midday, when the snow had finally stopped and the clouds began to show signs of breaking up. Marcus saddled his horse and helped Lily mount, then swung up behind her. He wrapped one arm around her waist, told himself it was purely practical, and tried to ignore how right it felt to hold her. The ride to Monticello took nearly 3 hours, the trail buried under fresh snow and the horse picking his way carefully. Marcus kept them at a walk, not wanting to risk injury to the animal. Lily was quiet for most of the journey, but he could feel her tension. She was nervous about arriving in town under these circumstances, about what people would think and say. The boarding house on Main Street is run by a woman named Martha Hendricks, Marcus said as they rode. She is a widow, good-hearted and discreet. I will take you there first and vouch for you. Martha knows everyone in town, and she will help you sort things out with the school board. You seem very confident about imposing on people's goodwill, Lily said, and he heard the uncertainty in her voice. I am not asking them to do anything extraordinary, Marcus replied. Just to help someone in need. That is what decent people do. Monticello appeared gradually through the trees, a small collection of wooden buildings huddled in a valley surrounded by snow-covered mesas. It was not much of a town, maybe 300 souls on a good day, but it had everything necessary for survival. A general store, a saloon, a church, a blacksmith, and the aforementioned boarding house. Marcus guided his horse directly to the boarding house, a neat two-story structure with a wide porch and curtains in the windows. He dismounted and helped Lily down, noticing how she swayed on her feet. The ride had taken a lot out of her. He steadied her with a hand on her elbow and led her up the steps to the front door. Before he could knock, the door swung open and Martha Hendricks herself stood there, a plump woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Marcus Zane, she said, taking in the scene before her with one sweeping glance. What trouble have you brought to my doorstep? No trouble, Martha, Marcus said. This is Miss Lily Patterson, the new schoolteacher. She was attacked by bandits on the stage from Durango and lost everything. She needs a room and help getting in touch with the school board. Martha's expression softened immediately. Oh, you poor child, she said, reaching out to take Lily's hands. Come in out of the cold. Marcus, bring her inside and then go fetch Harold Simmons from the general store. He is on the school board and will want to know about this. Marcus did as he was told, getting Lily settled in Martha's warm parlor before heading back out into the cold. He found Harold Simmons behind the counter of his store, a lean man with spectacles and a perpetually worried expression. Marcus explained the situation quickly, and Harold immediately closed the store and followed him back to the boarding house. By the time they returned, Martha had Lily installed in a chair by the fire with a cup of tea and what looked like half a roast chicken. Lily was eating as if she had not seen food in a week, which was not far from the truth. She looked up when Marcus and Harold entered, and he saw relief flood her face. Harold Simmons was all business, asking Lily questions about her credentials and her experience, taking notes in a small leather book. Lily answered as best she could, explaining about the attack and the loss of her papers. Harold frowned at that, but seemed inclined to believe her story, especially with Marcus's corroboration. This is highly irregular, Harold said, but the school has been closed for 3 weeks now since Miss Abernathy left, and the children are getting restless. If you can prove your credentials by mail, I see no reason why you cannot start teaching immediately. The salary is $40 a month plus room and board here at Martha's establishment. Does that suit you? Lily's eyes widened. That suits me very well, Mr. Simmons. Thank you for giving me a chance. Thank Marcus here, Harold said. He is the one who brought you to us. Now about the bandits. We need to inform the marshal immediately. This is the 4th stage robbery in 2 months and something must be done. Marcus spent the next hour giving his statement to the local deputy, describing what Lily had told him and speculating about where the attack might have occurred based on her timeline. The deputy promised to send word to the territorial marshal and organize a search party to look for the other passengers, though Marcus privately doubted they would find anyone alive after 2 nights in that weather. By the time all the official business was concluded, it was late afternoon and Marcus was exhausted. He had not slept properly in 2 days, and his body was reminding him of that fact. Martha insisted he stay for supper, and Marcus found he did not have the energy to refuse. He sat at Martha's long dining table with Lily and 2 other boarders, eating stew and fresh bread and trying not to fall asleep in his chair. Lily had cleaned up and changed into a borrowed dress that Martha had provided, and she looked almost like a different person. Her hair was brushed and pinned up, her face clean and bright, her eyes sparkling with renewed hope. She caught Marcus looking at her and smiled, and he quickly looked away, embarrassed at being caught staring. After supper, Martha shooed everyone out of the dining room and cornered Marcus in the parlor. "That girl has been through an ordeal," she said quietly. "She is putting on a brave face, but she is frightened and vulnerable. I hope you understand what I am saying." "I do," Marcus said. "And I have no intention of taking advantage. I just wanted to help." Martha studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you. You are a good man, Marcus Zane, even if you try hard to hide it. But I see the way you look at her, and I see the way she looks at you. Just be careful. She is going to be the school teacher in this town, which means her reputation matters. People will talk." "Let them talk," Marcus said, more sharply than he intended. "I am not doing anything wrong." "I know that," Martha said patiently, "but perception matters as much as reality in a small town. Just keep that in mind." Marcus left shortly after, riding slowly back to the Circle T ranch in the gathering darkness. His boss, Tom Thompson, was waiting for him in the ranch house, a grizzled man in his 60s who had been ranching in Utah since before the territory was organized. "I was about to send out a search party," Tom said when Marcus walked in. "Where the hell have you been?" Marcus told the story, leaving out none of the details. Tom listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting. When Marcus finished, Tom was quiet for a moment, then spoke. "You did right," he said simply. "That woman would have died if you had not found her. Good work." "Just luck," Marcus said, but he felt a warm glow of satisfaction at his boss's approval. "More than luck," Tom said. "You kept your head and made good decisions. That is why I keep you on. Now get some sleep. The cattle do not care about your adventures, and they will need feeding in the morning." Marcus went to the bunkhouse he shared with 3 other ranch hands and collapsed on his narrow bed without even bothering to undress. He was asleep in seconds, too exhausted to dream. The next few days fell into a familiar rhythm. Marcus worked long hours at the ranch, mending fences and feeding cattle and doing all the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running through winter. He told himself he was not thinking about Lily, that she was just a woman he had helped, and now she was living her own life in town. But his thoughts kept drifting to her against his will, wondering how she was settling in, whether she had gotten her school started, if she was warm enough in Martha's boarding house. On Sunday, Tom gave the hands the day off, and Marcus rode into town for church. He usually skipped services, having little use for organized religion after the way his father had used the Bible to justify his cruelty. But today, he felt drawn to attend. He told himself it was just to check on Lily, to make sure she was managing all right. The church was a simple white building with a tall steeple, and it was packed with townspeople when Marcus arrived. He slipped into a pew near the back, feeling out of place in his work clothes among the suits and Sunday dresses. The service had not yet started, and people were chatting and socializing. Marcus looked around and spotted Lily near the front, sitting with Martha Hendricks and wearing a dark blue dress that made her eyes look even deeper. She was talking to an older woman who Marcus recognized as the mayor's wife, and she looked confident and at ease. As if sensing his gaze, Lily turned and looked directly at him. Her face lit up with a genuine smile of delight, and Marcus felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. She excused herself from her conversation and made her way back to where he sat, weaving through the crowd with grace. "Marcus," she said, reaching his pew, "I am so glad you came. I was hoping I would get to see you and thank you properly for everything you did." "No thanks necessary," Marcus said, standing awkwardly. "I was just doing what anyone would do." "That is not true, and you know it," Lily said firmly. "You saved my life and then went out of your way to help me get established here. I owe you everything." "You do not owe me anything," Marcus insisted, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I am just glad you are all right. How is the teaching going?" Lily's face brightened even more. "Wonderful," she said. "I have 23 students ranging from 6 to 14 years old, and they are bright and eager to learn. The school building is basic, but we are making it work. Some of the parents have been very generous, bringing supplies and books and even firewood. I already feel welcome here." "That is good," Marcus said, genuinely pleased for her. "You deserve good things after what you went through." The organ started playing, signaling the start of the service, and Lily squeezed his hand quickly before returning to her seat. Marcus stood through the hymns and sat through the sermon without really hearing any of it, too distracted by the warmth of her hand in his and the memory of her smile. After the service, several townspeople made a point of coming up to Marcus to thank him for rescuing the schoolteacher. Word had spread quickly, as it always did in small towns, and public opinion had firmly cast him as the hero of the story. Marcus endured the attention with as much grace as he could muster, but he was relieved when he could finally escape outside. He was untying his horse from the hitching post when Lily appeared at his elbow, slightly breathless from hurrying. "Are you leaving already?" she asked, sounding disappointed. "I should get back to the ranch," Marcus said, though he had no real reason to rush. "Got work to do." "On Sunday." Lily gave him a skeptical look. "Even cowboys deserve a day of rest. Martha is serving Sunday dinner at 2 o'clock and she told me specifically to invite you. Please say you will come." Marcus hesitated, knowing he should refuse, knowing that spending more time with Lily would only make the feelings growing in his chest stronger. But he found himself nodding anyway. "All right," he said. 2 o'clock. Lily's face split into a radiant smile. "Wonderful, I will see you then." She hurried away, and Marcus watched her go with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He was falling for this woman, falling hard and fast, and he had no idea what to do about it. Sunday dinner at Martha's boarding house was a crowded affair. Besides Lily and Marcus, there were Martha's 2 other boarders, the deputy and his wife, Harold Simmons and his adult daughter, and a traveling salesman passing through town. The dining table was laden with roast beef, mashed potatoes, gravy, green beans, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. It was the kind of meal Marcus rarely enjoyed, and he ate with genuine appreciation. The conversation flowed easily, with everyone eager to hear more details about the stage robbery and Marcus's rescue of Lily. Marcus let Lily tell most of the story, adding details only when pressed. He noticed that she carefully omitted any mention of spending the night together in the line shack, saying only that Marcus had found shelter for them until the storm passed. Martha caught his eye across the table and gave him an approving nod, recognizing the discretion. After dinner, while the other guests retired to the parlor or headed home, Marcus helped Martha clear the table. Lily insisted on helping too, despite Martha's protests that she was a guest. The 3 of them worked companionably in the kitchen, washing and drying dishes and putting away leftovers. "Marcus, would you mind helping me move some furniture in the spare room?" Martha asked when they finished. "I have been meaning to rearrange it, but I need someone with muscle." It was an obvious excuse to leave him alone with Lily, and Marcus saw through it immediately, but he appreciated Martha's matchmaking instincts even if they made him nervous. He followed Martha upstairs while Lily stayed in the kitchen to finish putting away the last of the dishes. "That room does not need rearranging," Marcus said when they were out of earshot. "No, it does not," Martha agreed with a smile. "But that girl has been asking about you every day since you brought her here, and you rode all the way into town on your day off supposedly just for church. Neither of you is fooling anyone, so I am giving you a chance to talk to her properly without an audience. You are welcome." "Martha, I cannot," Marcus started, but she held up a hand. "Cannot what? Cannot court a good woman who clearly cares about you. Cannot let yourself be happy for once in your stubborn life. Marcus Zane, I have known you for 5 years, and in all that time, I have never seen you look at a woman the way you look at Lily Patterson. Do not waste this chance because you are scared." "I am not scared," Marcus protested, but they both knew it was a lie. "Life is short and uncertain," Martha said gently. "That girl could have frozen to death on that trail, and you could have ridden past without seeing her, but fate or God or whatever you want to call it brought you two together. That means something. Now go downstairs and talk to her." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew Martha was right. He was scared, terrified actually, of opening his heart to someone and giving them the power to hurt him. But he was also drawn to Lily in a way he could not deny. And maybe Martha was right that some chances only came once. He went back downstairs and found Lily alone in the parlor, standing by the window and looking out at the snowy street. She turned when she heard him enter, and the soft smile she gave him made his breath catch. "Thank you for coming today," she said. "It meant a lot to me to see you." "I wanted to make sure you were settling in all right," Marcus said, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. "I am more than all right," Lily said. "This town has been incredibly welcoming and the work is fulfilling. But I keep thinking about that night in the line shack, how close I came to dying, and how you risked your own safety to save me. You gave me your coat even though it meant you would be cold. You gave me warmth and shelter and safety when I had nothing. I will never forget that." "Anyone would have done the same," Marcus said, though he knew it was not true. "No, they would not," Lily said, moving closer to him. "Most people would have kept riding, anxious to get themselves to safety. You stopped, you helped, and you asked for nothing in return. That says something about who you are as a person, Marcus Zane." Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "I am no hero," he said quietly, "just a drifter who works other people's ranches. I have no land of my own, no real prospects, no family to speak of. I am not the kind of man you should be grateful to." "You are exactly the kind of man I should be grateful to," Lily said firmly. "And you are exactly the kind of man I want to get to know better. Unless I am completely misreading this situation, and you have no interest in me beyond rescuing me from freezing to death." Marcus looked at her standing there in the afternoon light filtering through the window, her brown eyes steady on his face, her expression open and hopeful, and he felt the last of his resistance collapse. "You are not misreading anything," he admitted. "I have not been able to stop thinking about you since I wrapped my coat around you on that trail. But Lily, I do not know how to do this. I do not know how to court a woman properly or what the rules are. I have spent my whole adult life avoiding exactly this kind of situation." "Then we will figure it out together," Lily said, and she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm in his calloused palm, and Marcus marveled at how natural it felt. "I am not asking for promises or declarations, Marcus. I am just asking if you would like to spend time with me to see where this goes. Is that something you want?" Marcus looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. He thought about all the years he had spent alone, keeping people at arm's length, convincing himself that solitude was safety. Then he thought about how empty that existence had been, how much he had missed without even realizing it. "Yes," he said simply, "that is something I want." Lily's smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. She squeezed his hand, and Marcus felt something in his chest unlock, something that had been closed tight for so many years he had forgotten it was there. They talked for hours that afternoon, sitting side by side on Martha's sofa and sharing the stories of their lives. Lily told him about growing up in Kansas as the daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress, about her love of books and learning, about her decision to go west and make her own way in the world. Marcus told her about his difficult childhood, his years of drifting, the ranches he had worked and the places he had seen. They found common ground in their shared experience of being alone in the world, of having to build their own futures without the safety net of family or wealth. When Marcus finally left as evening shadows grew long, he felt different somehow, lighter and more hopeful than he could remember feeling in years. He rode back to the Circle T ranch with a foolish grin on his face, and when the other ranch hands teased him about where he had been all day, he just smiled and did not answer. Over the following weeks, Marcus found reasons to ride into Monticello as often as his work allowed. He attended church services regularly for the first time in his life, always sitting in the same pew near the back and watching Lily when he thought no one was looking. After church, he would join her for Sunday dinner at Martha's, and they would spend the afternoon talking or taking walks through town when the weather permitted. The whole town noticed, of course, and opinions were divided. Most people thought it was romantic, the cowboy and the schoolteacher falling for each other after such dramatic circumstances. But there were some, primarily older women with their own ideas about propriety, who whispered that it was not seemly for an unmarried schoolteacher to be keeping company with a ranch hand. Lily heard the whispers and ignored them, holding her head high and continuing to do her job with dedication and skill. Marcus heard the whispers too, and they bothered him more than he wanted to admit. He worried that his attention was damaging Lily's reputation, that he was being selfish in pursuing her when he had so little to offer. He was still just a hired hand, living in a bunkhouse and earning $30 a month. What kind of future could he offer a woman like Lily? He tried to back away, telling himself it was for her own good. He skipped church one Sunday, and then another, throwing himself into work at the ranch and trying to convince himself that what he felt for Lily was just a passing infatuation that would fade with distance. But it did not fade. If anything, staying away from her made the longing worse. He caught himself thinking about her at odd moments, remembering the sound of her laugh or the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her students. He dreamed about her at night, vivid dreams where they were together and happy, and woke up aching with the loss when reality reasserted itself. After 3 weeks of Marcus's absence, Lily took matters into her own hands. On a cold February afternoon, she appeared at the Circle T ranch riding a borrowed horse and wearing a determined expression. Marcus was in the barn mending tack when he heard a commotion outside. He stepped out to see Lily dismounting in the ranch yard while Tom Thompson and the other hands stared in surprise. "Lily," Marcus said, hurrying over to her, "what are you doing here?" "I came to find out why you have been avoiding me," Lily said, her voice steady but her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. "I thought we had an understanding, Marcus. I thought we were building something. Then you just disappeared without explanation. I deserve better than that." Marcus was acutely aware of his boss and the other ranch hands watching this scene unfold, but Lily did not seem to care about their audience. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Marcus asked quietly. "No," Lily said. "I am tired of everything being private and secret, of tiptoeing around what we feel because we are worried about what people will think. I care about you, Marcus Zane, and I am not ashamed of that. I want to know if you feel the same way, or if I have been a fool." Marcus looked at her standing there in the ranch yard, brave and beautiful and refusing to let him hide anymore. He thought about Martha's words about not wasting chances, and he knew what he had to do. "You are not a fool," Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I care about you too, more than I have ever cared about anyone. I was trying to protect you by staying away, because I thought you deserved better than what I could offer. But if you are willing to take a chance on a poor cowboy with nothing but his horse and his word, then I would be honored to court you properly." Tom Thompson chose that moment to speak up. "Marcus, you have been with me for 4 years and you are the best hand I have ever employed. You work hard, you are honest, and the cattle trust you. I have been thinking it is time I promoted you to foreman. The job comes with a small house on the north section and a raise to $60 a month. If you are thinking about settling down and starting a family, that would be a good start." Marcus stared at his boss in shock. The foreman position had been empty since old Jack retired last fall, and Tom had been doing the job himself rather than promoting someone. For him to offer it now, in front of everyone, was unexpected and generous. "I accept," Marcus said, finding his voice. "Thank you, Tom." Tom nodded, looking pleased. "Good. Now can someone please help Miss Patterson with her horse? She rode all the way out here and she needs some hot coffee before she heads back." The tension broke and everyone moved at once. One of the hands took Lily's horse to water and rest, while another hurried to the cook's shack to fetch coffee. Tom tactfully herded everyone away, giving Marcus and Lily a moment of semi-privacy in the busy ranch yard. "You came all the way out here to confront me," Marcus said, still marveling at her courage. "I did," Lily said, "because you are worth fighting for, even if you do not believe that yourself. I told you I wanted to see where this goes, and I meant it. You do not get to make decisions for both of us without even talking to me first." "You are right," Marcus admitted. "I am sorry. I got scared and I ran, which is what I always do, but I do not want to run anymore. I want to stay and see where this goes too." Lily's expression softened. "Good. Then we are in agreement. And congratulations on the promotion, Foreman Zane. Does that house on the north section have room for a wife someday?" Marcus felt his face heat, but he smiled. "It might. I will have to check." They were still smiling at each other like fools when Martha appeared in a wagon driven by Harold Simmons, having apparently followed Lily from town to make sure she arrived safely. Martha took one look at the scene and nodded with satisfaction. "I see you two have sorted things out," she said. "Good. Lily, we need to get you back to town before dark. Marcus, you are invited to dinner on Sunday. Do not make me come looking for you again." Marcus spent the rest of that week floating on air, barely able to focus on work as he thought about Lily and the future that suddenly seemed possible. Tom was as good as his word, officially promoting Marcus to foreman and showing him the small house on the north section of the ranch. It was simple but well built, with 2 rooms and a sleeping loft, a stone fireplace, and a small barn for animals. It needed work, cleaning and repairs and basic furniture, but Marcus could see its potential. He could see a life there, a home. He spent every spare moment fixing up the house, driven by a vision of Lily standing in the doorway welcoming him home. He patched the roof, repaired the shutters, cleaned years of dust and mouse droppings, and built a table and chairs from rough lumber. The other ranch hands helped when they could, caught up in Marcus's enthusiasm and happy to see him finally settling down. On Sunday, Marcus rode into town wearing his best clothes, which were not much but were clean and pressed. He had a bouquet of winter wildflowers he had found growing in a sheltered spot on the ranch, scraggly and small, but the only flowers available in February. He felt like an awkward boy instead of a man of 31, nervous and hopeful and terrified of making a mistake. Lily met him at the door of the boarding house, and her face lit up when she saw the flowers. "They are beautiful," she said, taking them gently. "No one has ever brought me flowers before." "Then everyone you knew before was a fool," Marcus said, and was rewarded with a blush and a brilliant smile. They walked through town together that afternoon, properly chaperoned by Martha, who followed at a discreet distance but close enough to satisfy propriety. They talked about everything and nothing, making plans and sharing dreams. Marcus told her about the house he was fixing up, describing it in detail and watching her eyes grow bright with interest. "I would love to see it," Lily said. "Soon," Marcus promised. "When it is ready, I will bring you out to see it properly." They courted through the rest of winter and into spring, navigating the complex rules of frontier courtship with varying degrees of success. Marcus learned what it meant to call on a woman regularly, to bring small gifts and pay compliments, and win the approval of her friends. Lily learned about ranch life and horses and cattle, asking endless questions about Marcus's work, and showing genuine interest in the life he led. The townspeople watched their romance unfold with general approval, most of the initial objections fading as it became clear that Marcus and Lily were serious about each other. The school board made it known that they would allow Lily to continue teaching after marriage if she wished, which was progressive for the time, but reflected the town's desperate need for a good teacher and their appreciation of Lily's skills. In April, when the snow had melted and the first wildflowers were blooming on the hillsides, Marcus took Lily to see the finished house. He drove her out in a borrowed wagon, his palms sweating despite the cool spring air. He had worked himself nearly to exhaustion getting the place ready, wanting everything to be perfect. When they arrived and Marcus helped Lily down from the wagon, she stood for a moment just looking at the house. It was small and simple, but the windows sparkled clean in the sunlight and the door hung straight on its hinges. Fresh curtains that Martha had helped him make hung in the windows, and smoke curled from the chimney where Marcus had laid a fire earlier. "Come see inside," Marcus said, his voice rough with nerves. He led her through the door into the main room where his handmade furniture stood ready and a cheerful fire crackled in the hearth. He had cleaned and scrubbed until everything gleamed, and added small touches like a rag rug before the fireplace and wildflowers in a jar on the table. Lily walked slowly through the space, taking everything in. She climbed the ladder to peek at the sleeping loft, examined the sturdy shelves Marcus had built, ran her hand over the table he had sanded smooth. When she turned back to face him, there were tears in her eyes. "You built all this?" she asked. "For us?" "I hoped it would be for us," Marcus said. "Lily, I know I am not much of a catch. I do not have money or property or a fancy education, but I have this house and a decent job and a heart that belongs completely to you. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" He had not planned to propose right then, had intended to wait and do it properly with a ring and a romantic speech, but the words came tumbling out anyway, clumsy and heartfelt. Lily crossed the room to him and took both his hands in hers. "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you too, Marcus Zane. From the moment you wrapped your coat around me on that frozen trail, you have been giving me pieces of your heart. I want to spend the rest of my life giving you mine in return." Marcus pulled her into his arms and kissed her, his first kiss, their first kiss, and it was everything he had imagined and more. She melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck. And for a long, perfect moment, nothing existed except the two of them and the promise of forever they had just made. They married in June in Monticello's small church, with the whole town in attendance. Lily wore a simple white dress that Martha and several other women had helped her make, with wildflowers woven into her hair. Marcus wore a new suit that had cost him nearly a month's wages, but was worth it to see the approval in Lily's eyes. Tom Thompson served as his best man, and Martha stood with Lily. The ceremony was simple and traditional, the words familiar but made profound by the emotion behind them. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife and Marcus kissed his bride, the church erupted in applause and cheers. They walked back down the aisle together, hands clasped, facing their future as one. The whole town turned out for the celebration that followed, with tables set up in the street loaded with food and drink. There was music and dancing, and Marcus found himself swept into the festivities despite his usual preference for staying on the sidelines. He danced with his wife, marveling at those words, and accepted congratulations from what felt like 100 people. As evening approached and guests began to drift away, Marcus and Lily climbed into the wagon he had decorated with ribbons and flowers, and headed out to their little house on the north section. The sun was setting as they arrived, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and Marcus lifted Lily down from the wagon and carried her over the threshold as tradition demanded. He set her gently on her feet inside their home, and they stood for a moment in the gathering darkness, just holding each other and breathing in the reality of their new life together. "I am so happy," Lily whispered against his chest. "I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Marcus admitted. "For so many years I convinced myself that I was fine alone, that I did not need anyone. Then you came into my life and showed me what I was missing. You showed me that love is not a weakness but a strength. Thank you for taking a chance on me." "Thank you for stopping on that trail," Lily said. "Thank you for giving me your coat and your kindness and eventually your heart. I will treasure all of it forever." They made a life together in that small house, learning the rhythms of marriage and partnership. Lily continued teaching through the next school year, riding into town each day while Marcus managed the ranch's north section. In the evenings, they would reunite, sharing meals and conversation, and slowly building the intimacy that comes with truly knowing another person. Their first winter as a married couple was harsh, with heavy snows and bitter cold, but they weathered it together with joy. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, Marcus mending tack while Lily graded papers or prepared lessons, and marvel at how different their lives were from just a year earlier. Sometimes they would talk about that night in the line shack, the night that had brought them together, and feel grateful for the storm that had put them in each other's paths. In spring, Lily announced that she was pregnant. Marcus received the news with a mixture of joy and terror, suddenly aware of the enormous responsibility of bringing a new life into the world. But Lily was calm and confident, and her certainty helped steady him. They spent the summer preparing for their child, with Marcus building a cradle from smooth pine wood and Lily sewing tiny clothes with Martha's help. Their son was born in October of 1883, a healthy baby with dark hair and his mother's brown eyes. They named him Daniel, after Lily's father, and Marcus held the tiny bundle with shaking hands while Lily slept, exhausted from labor. He looked down at his son's small, perfect face and felt his heart expand to encompass this new, fierce love, this overwhelming need to protect and provide. Being parents changed them in ways both profound and subtle. Marcus discovered reserves of patience he had not known he possessed, learned to function on broken sleep, and to find joy in small milestones like first smiles and first words. Lily proved to be a natural mother, somehow managing to balance caring for their son with her teaching duties, though she reduced her hours at the school to part-time. 2 years later, their daughter was born, and they named her Rose for the wildflowers that had bloomed when Marcus proposed. She had her father's gray eyes and her mother's smile, and she was spoiled shamelessly by both parents and everyone in Monticello. Daniel adapted to his role as big brother with enthusiasm, always wanting to help with his baby sister. The years rolled by, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Daniel grew tall and serious, fascinated by ranch work and eager to follow in his father's footsteps. Rose proved to have her mother's love of learning, always with her nose in a book, and asking endless questions about everything. Marcus grew from foreman to partner when Tom Thompson decided to semi-retire, giving Marcus a share in the ranch in recognition of his years of dedicated service. It meant more money and more responsibility, but also the security of knowing his family would always have a home and income. Marcus took his new role seriously, managing the ranch with skill and fairness, earning the respect of the hands who worked under him. Lily eventually retired from teaching when Rose started school, wanting to focus on her own children's education and help Marcus with ranch bookkeeping and management. But she never lost her love of learning or teaching, and their home was always full of books and lively discussions. She taught Sunday school at the church and organized a lending library in town, making sure that education remained a priority in Monticello. In 1890, when Daniel was 7 and Rose was 5, Lily found herself pregnant again unexpectedly. They welcomed another son whom they named Thomas after Marcus's partner, and the little boy proved to be the most adventurous of their children, always getting into mischief and keeping his parents on their toes. Through all the years and all the changes, Marcus and Lily never forgot where they started. Every January, on the anniversary of the day Marcus found Lily on that snowy trail, they would bundle up against the cold and ride out to visit the old line shack that had sheltered them. It had fallen into disrepair, the roof sagging and the door hanging crooked, but to them it was sacred ground. They would stand there holding hands, sometimes in snow and sometimes in rare winter sunshine, and remember the desperate young woman and the lonely cowboy who had found each other in the midst of a storm. They would talk about how far they had come, how much they had built together, and renew their commitment to each other and their family. "You ever regret it?" Marcus asked on their 15th anniversary, standing outside the old shack with silver starting to thread through his dark hair. "Marrying a poor cowboy when you could have had so much more." Lily looked at him with love and exasperation. "Marcus Zane, after 15 years and 3 children, are you still asking me that question? You gave me everything that matters. You gave me love and partnership and a family and a life I treasure. I would not change a single moment, not even the terrifying ones, especially not the terrifying ones because they led me to you." "I love you," Marcus said, pulling her close. "More today than the day I married you, which I would not have thought possible." "I love you too," Lily said, her breath making clouds in the cold air. "Thank you for stopping on that trail. Thank you for seeing me when you could have ridden past. Thank you for giving me your coat and your heart." They stood there in the winter afternoon, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from nothing. The wind that had once threatened death now just whispered around them, a reminder of how far they had come and how much they had survived together. As they rode back to their home, where their children waited and a fire burned warm in the hearth, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. He had spent so many years running from connection, convinced that caring was dangerous and love was a trap. But Lily had shown him the truth, that love was not a weakness but the greatest strength of all. It was love that had made him stop on that trail when everything in him wanted to keep riding. It was love that had given him the courage to open his heart after so many years of keeping it locked away. And it was love that made every day worth living, that turned a simple house into a home and a collection of moments into a life. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of both joy and sorrow. Tom Thompson died in 1895, leaving his share of the ranch entirely to Marcus in recognition of their partnership and friendship. It made Marcus one of the more prosperous men in the county, though he never forgot his humble beginnings or lost his empathy for those struggling to make their way. Daniel grew into a fine young man who loved ranching as much as his father did, eventually taking over much of the day-to-day management. Rose surprised everyone by becoming a teacher like her mother, taking over Lily's old position at the Monticello school and proving to be just as beloved by her students. Young Thomas went his own way, heading west to Colorado to seek his fortune in mining, though he wrote home faithfully and visited whenever he could. Marcus and Lily grew old together, their hair turning silver and their faces gaining the lines that come from years of laughter and hard work and facing life's challenges together. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, the center of a sprawling family that filled their home with noise and love during holidays and celebrations. They never moved from the small house on the north section, though they expanded it over the years as their family grew. Marcus always said it was the first real home he had ever known, the place where he learned what it meant to belong somewhere and to someone. Lily planted gardens around it, flowers and vegetables that bloomed in riotous color every summer, and she always kept wildflowers on the table in honor of that first bouquet Marcus had brought her. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration that lasted 3 days. There were children and grandchildren everywhere, filling the house and spilling out into the yard, generations of love and family that had all started with a cowboy and a nearly frozen woman on a snowy trail. At the height of the celebration, Marcus stood to make a toast. He was 71 years old now, his body bearing the marks of a lifetime of hard work, but his eyes were clear and his voice was strong. 40 years ago, he said, I found a woman shivering by the side of the trail in the worst storm I have ever seen. I gave her my coat because it was the right thing to do, never imagining that in return she would give me everything that makes life worth living. Lily, you took a broken man who had convinced himself he was better off alone, and you showed him the truth. You loved me when I did not know how to love myself. You gave me children and grandchildren, you gave me a home and a purpose, and you gave me 40 years of happiness I never thought I deserved. Thank you for being brave enough to take a chance on me. Thank you for every day of these 40 years. I love you more than words can say. There was not a dry eye in the room when he finished, and Lily stood to embrace him while their family applauded and cheered. She whispered something in his ear that made him smile, and they held each other close while their children and grandchildren surrounded them. Marcus lived to see his 82nd year, dying peacefully in his sleep with Lily beside him and his family near. His last words were to tell Lily he loved her, the same words he had spoken thousands of times over their 51 years of marriage, and she held his hand until the very end. Lily followed him 3 years later, her heart finally giving out after a lifetime of loving fiercely and completely. Her children were with her when she died, and her last words were about Marcus, about the cowboy who had stopped on a snowy trail all those years ago and changed the course of her life. They were buried side by side in the Monticello cemetery, under a shared headstone that bore both their names and a simple inscription, together forever, from that snowy trail to eternity. Their story became legend in Monticello, passed down through generations as a reminder of the power of kindness and the strength of love. The old line shack where they had sheltered eventually collapsed completely, but their descendants placed a marker there, commemorating the spot where Marcus Zane gave Lily Patterson his coat, and in doing so, gave her his heart. And on cold winter nights when the snow falls thick and the wind howls through the mountains, people in Monticello still tell the story of the cowboy and the schoolteacher, of how a single act of compassion in the midst of a storm led to a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. They tell it to remind themselves that heroes are not always grand or dramatic. Sometimes they are just ordinary people who choose to stop when they could keep riding, who choose to care when it would be easier not to, who choose love even when they are afraid. The small house on the north section still stands, occupied now by Daniel's grandson and his family, the fifth generation to call it home. The wildflowers that Lily planted still bloom every summer, and inside, on the mantel above the fireplace that Marcus built with his own hands, sits a small display. There is a photograph of Marcus and Lily on their wedding day, young and hopeful and radiantly happy. Next to it is a faded sheepskin coat, the very one that Marcus wrapped around Lily on that frozen trail in 1882, carefully preserved as a family treasure. And every January, on the anniversary of that fateful day, the family gathers to remember and celebrate the moment that started it all, when a cowboy found a woman shivering by a snowy trail, gave her his coat, and discovered that in saving her life, she had saved his as well. They toast to Marcus and Lily, to love that endures beyond death, and to the simple truth that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. The Wild West was a hard and unforgiving place, full of danger and uncertainty and loss. But it was also a place where hearts could find each other against impossible odds, where love could bloom in the harshest conditions, and where two people could build a legacy that would last for generations. Marcus and Lily proved that, living it every day of their long life together, showing everyone around them that love was worth any risk and every sacrifice. Their story ended, as all stories must, but the love they shared and the family they built lived on, a testament to the power of one cowboy's decision to stop on a snowy trail and help a stranger in need. It was a decision that cost him nothing but a moment of his time and the temporary warmth of his coat, but it gave him everything that mattered. And in the end, that was the real lesson of their story, that giving costs us nothing compared to what we receive in return, and that love, true love, is always worth the risk.